Canada has put a lot of effort into attracting EV manufacturing, and so for sure, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government wants to make sure that those factories and investments and what they want to attract in the future is not undermined by China. But absolutely, this is about Canada's relationship with the U.S. as well. And the last thing Canada wants is for the U.S. to see Canada as a weak point, right? As a potential side door for Chinese EVs. And so I think it's really about both things, but especially that Canada-US relationship.
What's the support level amongst Canadians for just tariffs in general? Because a lot of folks will tell you, hey, this is just a tax on consumers.
Yeah, there will be some pushback on this, but I think generally there's a political consensus that these tariffs are necessary. And again, it's for both reasons, right? I mean, Canada wants its own manufacturing sector, especially that share of the auto manufacturing sector, in especially electorally important regions around Toronto and southern Ontario. That's where those factories tend to be, and so I think there's a lot of support for protecting those jobs. But Canadians also understand that Canada's got to make sure it doesn't get too far offside with the U.S. I'm sure there will be some people who are concerned that this will make EVs more expensive at a time when it's hard to get to consumer adoption of EVs is not as high as a lot of environmentalists, especially, would want it to be. But I think generally you'll see a lot of consensus in support of this.
Um, does Canada buy a lot of China EVs at the end of the day, though?
Right now, it's basically Tesla's being manufactured in Shanghai. That's at the moment, that is the only significant inflow of Chinese-made EVs into Canada. I suspect Tesla will move that production to other factories to avoid these tariffs. But we know that BYD in particular, the giant Chinese automaker, is looking around. They've hired lobbyists in Ottawa to look at possible opportunities to build and or sell in Canada. So Canada's trying to get ahead of that. But at the moment, it's basically just Teslas.
Brian, what is, just in terms of the EV, what's the adoption been like in Canada? Because here in the US, it seems to have hit a kind of a rough patch, a little bump in the road here in terms of adoption. How is it in Canada?
It's pretty similar, I would say, to the US. Canadians, the very popular vehicles here tend to be SUVs and trucks, and I don't think that, from what I've seen, there's not a lot of EV adoption in that space yet. It's pretty similar to the US. I will say there are a couple of provinces, Quebec and British Columbia, who EV adoption is higher in those provinces because those provinces were pretty early at rolling out consumer incentives and sales mandates. So some regions of the country have seen higher adoption than others.
That's interesting. Is there going to be more? Is this the beginning or is this the end?
I do think this is the beginning. And in fact, today Trudeau announced there will also be a consultation on other products. Basically, again, sort of following what what U.S. President Joe Biden announced earlier. So I think the consultation that will start now on other potential tariffs will focus on solar cells, semiconductors, critical minerals. I suspect we will see more tariffs in the near future.